The big debate, Julian, has been to what extent oil stockpiles globally coming down, OPEC admitting they're not coming down as fast. I liked your piece yesterday where you asked the question, are global stockpiles declining at all? What's the answer?
The answer is really that there is a great deal of uncertainty because although we get this huge amount of data out of the US every week on inventory levels there, we don't get anything like that data from other parts of the world. We get data on a monthly basis out of Europe, but that can be a little patchy and assessments of that vary. Once you move out of the Western Hemisphere, you move to Asia, stockpile data is very delayed and very patchy, and in some cases non-existent at all. I mean, the Chinese tend to regard their strategic stockpile data, for example, as a state secret, and that's a big part of Chinese inventories, and it's a big part of the week-on-week and month-on-month change in inventories because China's still building its strategic stockpile. So we get much less clarity coming out of that. But I think the one thing that is clear is that OPEC's output cuts, however you measure compliance with them, and there are all sorts of numbers that have been floating around in the last day or so, those cuts have not yet had the impact either on inventory levels or on prices that OPEC had hoped they would.
Is Saudi Arabia going to shoulder the bulk of the cuts, and if so, for how long? Well,
this is the big question. Certainly in January, it cut much more than it needed to. It was down well below 10 million barrels a day. All the analysts that we surveyed and the oil companies and the other people that we survey to put together our monthly assessment of production for February believed that the same thing had happened in February, that Saudi Arabia had continued to shoulder a disproportionate share of the burden. The numbers that Saudi Arabia gave to OPEC yesterday show that not to be the case, or to be not as strong as had previously been thought. They have shown their own production back up above 10 million barrels a day, still below what they said they would cut to, but not nearly as big a cut as they had in January. Now, that can be one of many things. The Saudi Energy Ministry was very quick to say, oh, well, this is because we were putting oil back into domestic storage, having taken some out of domestic storage in January. Well, OK, so that means the cuts weren't perhaps quite as big in January in terms of supply to the market as the production figure says. But that aside, I think this is a clear indication that Saudi Arabia is sticking to its guns of effectively what it said even since back in November 2014, that it's not prepared to do this alone, it's not prepared to shoulder the burden for other people, and that the rest of OPEC and the non-OPEC countries that join them have to do their bit.